The message arrived encrypted in the belly of a dead god's skull. Pirate Lord Krazek's scavengers found it lodged in the fossilized cortex of the Nixian Leviathan, a creature so ancient its bones had calcified into asteroid rock. The data core was human-made, its edges stamped with a half-scorched insignia Union Naval Command. Krazek's lieutenant, a scarred crustacean hybrid named Vec, cracked the encryption with a plasma torch and a prayer. What spilled out wasn't coordinates or weapon schematics. It was a child's laugh, bright and clear, followed by a man's voice rasping a joke about black holes and bad haircuts. "Why don't singularities ever get lonely?" the voice drawled. "They've got infinite mass appeal." Vec recoiled, his exoskeleton blistering as the recording's subsonic frequencies triggered an allergic reaction. The crew hissed in panic, claws clattering against the Leviathan's ossified ribs. Only Krazek recognized the voice. The Reaper, Admiral Ravi Malik, had earned his title in the Cerulean Purge, slaughtering pirate armadas with tactics so ruthless they bordered on artistry. Legends claimed he'd once lured the Krillian hive into a nebula and detonated their queen with a pun so vile it short-circuited their neural collective. But that was decades ago. The Reaper had vanished after the war, leaving behind rumors of a daughter and a trail of unanswered questions. Krazek studied the data core, his claw tracing the Union insignia, a weakness, buried in static, a man's laughter, a child's name, Zoe, and a location, Haven 7, a derelict station orbiting a dying star. "Fools," he muttered to the void. The galaxy had forgotten the Reaper's wrath. Krazek would not. But he'd forgotten the first rule of hunting monsters: never wake the ones who've made peace with sleep. Chapter 1. The station's docking bay hummed with the dissonant symphony of decay, the creak of fatigued bulkheads, the intermittent hiss of leaking pipes, the low drone of malfunctioning gravity stabilizers. Admiral Ravi Malik crouched beneath the skeletal remains of a derelict frigate, his calloused hands slick with engine grease, his breath fogging in the cold air. The Starblade was a corpse, her thrusters choked with carbon scoring and neglect, but her captain paid in unmarked credsticks and didn't ask questions. Ravi preferred it that way. Questions led to recognition, and recognition to the kind of attention he'd spent 5 years outrunning. Here, in the bowels of Haven 7 Orbital, he was no longer the Reaper of the Cerulean Front, he was a mechanic. A ghost, a man who told jokes to shadows. Why did the ion drive break up with the warp core? He thought, squinting at a corroded fuel line. It needed space. The punchline echoed in his skull, unanswered. 20 years ago, that joke would have drawn groans from a bridge crew. Now, it dissolved into the metallic stink of the bay, swallowed by the weight of rust and isolation. He tightened a valve with his wrench, the tool's teeth biting into metal, and tried not to remember the way Lieutenant Vera had rolled her eyes at his puns, or how Ensign Kale would stifle laughter during tactical briefings. Corpses, all of them, burned to ash in the siege of Typhon Prime. A chime pierced the silence. Ravi froze. The sound came not from the Starblade, but from the corner of the bay, where a terminal lay buried beneath a frayed tarp. No one contacted him here. No one could. The terminal's encryption protocols were designed to outwit Union spies and bounty hunters alike, yet the chime persisted, sharp and arrhythmic, a blade against his nerves. He approached slowly, the tarp slipping away to reveal a cracked screen glowing with a single line of text: Zoe Malik, Docking Bay C, arrival in 0 hours 12 minutes and 17 seconds, 12 minutes. His throat tightened. 12 minutes until his daughter stood in this graveyard of ships, her sharp eyes dissecting his cobweb tools, the cot shoved against the wall, the half-empty bottle of Reuvian bourbon he'd sworn he'd quit. He'd told her he was thriving in retirement. Liar, hissed the voice in his head, the one that still sounded like his ex-wife, Anya, her accent curling around the word like smoke. He stuffed the bottle into a locker, kicked a pile of spent fusion cells under the workbench, and ran a hand through his graying hair. The face in the terminal's reflection stared back, a stranger with hollow eyes and a jagged scar cutting through his stubble. The station's central corridor was a scar itself, a dim dripping tunnel where lumen strips flickered like dying stars. Ravi walked briskly, his boots splashing through oily puddles, his reflection warping in the ripples. Scavengers in patched vac suits lurked in alcoves, their whispers trailing him. That's the Reaper. Nah, Reaper'd have better boots. He kept his gaze forward. Let them doubt. Doubt was safer than truth. Ahead, the massive airlock of Docking Bay C shuddered open, its gears grinding like broken bones. A sleek black shuttle slid through the force field, its matte hull devouring the light. No markings, no transponder signal, Zoe's signature. The ramp descended with a hydraulic sigh. She emerged like a blade unsheathed, tall, her black flight suit tailored to military precision, her dark hair cropped close to her skull. The scar on her temple, a relic from her first command, glinted pale under the lumen strips. A negotiation tactic, he'd called it when she'd returned from the border skirmishes. Blood crusted under her nails and a stolen destroyer in tow. She'd glared at him then, the same way she glared now, amber eyes sharp enough to flay armor. You're early, he said, hands buried in his grease-streaked pockets. Zoe didn't smile. Her gaze swept the bay, calculating distances, threats, the exact angle of the scavengers' slouched postures. You look terrible, she said finally, hoisting a duffel onto her shoulder. Flattery, you must need something. She brushed past him, her shoulder grazing his. For a heartbeat, he caught the scent of gun oil and citrus, her shampoo, unchanged since she was 16, and the memory struck like a gut punch. Zoe at 8 years old, her small fists clutching his uniform, screaming as Union officers pried her away. You promised you'd stay. The docking bay blurred. He steadied himself against a bulkhead, the metal cold and unyielding. They walked in silence through the station's rotting veins, past gutted freighters, and flickering holoboards advertising contraband. Zoe paused beside a half-dismantled engine block, her gloved finger tracing a fracture in the casing, still fixing everyone else's messes. Someone has to. You could have taken the academy post, taught the next generation of heroes, and listened to cadets' parrot doctrine. I'd rather lick a plasma coil. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Almost. You'd have hated it. Exactly. The residential sector loomed ahead, its corridors strewn with discarded ration packs and fractured glow rods. Ravi's quarters crouched at the end, a metal box papered with star charts and fading holos. Zoe lingered in the doorway, her eyes fixed on a cracked image of a younger Ravi receiving the Stella Viridian, his dress whites immaculate, his smile bright and foreign. You should burn that, she said quietly. Why? It's a good reminder. Of what? That metals make terrible bedfellows. She snorted, dropping her duffel onto his cot. The room seemed to shrink around her, the air thick with the things they never said. Ravi busied himself with a dented kettle, its coils hissing as they heated. Chamomile. She'd hated it since childhood, but it was all he had. I'm surveying the Kuiper belt, she said abruptly. 8 weeks, maybe 10. The kettle trembled in his grip. Steam curled around his wrist, scalding. Alone? It's a mapping run, Dad, not a suicide pact. The belt's a graveyard. Last month, scavs tore the horizon's dawn apart, for its quantum cores. I know. She leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I'll be fine. The Kestrel's faster than anything in their fleets. He stared into his mug, the tea's floral stench clawing at his throat. The Kestrel was a predator, sleek, armed, and about as subtle as a supernova. Just keep your transponder active, so you can stalk me from here. So I can send a frigate if your diplomacy backfires. She rolled her eyes. Anya's gesture, exact and effortless, and unzipped her duffel. Brought you something. A sealed package slid across the workbench. Protein bars, the expensive kind, infused with real fruit. His chest ached. She'd done this since she was 12, smuggling him treats from Union outposts, as if he were a stray she'd adopted. You shouldn't have, he said. You'd starve otherwise. They lapsed into silence. Ravi's gaze drifted to the holos. Zoe at 6, grinning on his shoulders at the lunar fair. Zoe at 15, glowering beside her first starfighter. Zoe at 22, standing atop the wreckage of a Krillian gunship, her face smeared with soot and triumph. He'd missed more than he'd witnessed. Duty, the Union called it. A prettier word for abandonment. You should visit Anya, she said suddenly. She asks about you. The air thickened. Anya's face flashed in his mind, gray streaking her dark hair, her smile weary at the edges. She'd left him after Typhon Prime, after the nightmares started leaking into his waking hours. You're here, but you're not, she'd said, her voice frayed. I can't love a ghost. Maybe, he lied. Zoe's comms bracelet chimed. She glanced at the hologram, a string of encrypted coordinates, and stood. I need to prep the Kestrel. He followed her to the bay, the station's groans deepening as night cycle approached. Her shuttle awaited, a dagger of black alloy. She paused at the ramp, her back to him. Dad, yeah? If I'm late, don't come looking. A joke, it had to be, but her voice held an edge he couldn't place. Before he could reply, she boarded, the ramp sealing with a final thud. The Kestrel's engines flared, bathing the bay in cold blue light. Then she was gone, leaving only ion trails, and the echo of her warning. The terminal chimed again 3 hours later. Ravi stared at the hologram, blazing above his workbench. Krazek, the pirate lord, filled the screen, a hulking crustacean hybrid, his carapace cracked and oozing, his claws adorned with human fingerbones. Behind him, suspended in a biogel tank, Zoe glared defiantly, her hands bound, blood trickling from her split lip. You have something I want, Reaper, Krazek rasped. Bring it to the Nixian belt, or watch her suffocate. The transmission died. Ravi's wrench hit the floor, the clang reverberating through the bay. The Reaper stirred in his chest, a shadow uncoiling, whispering old strategies. But beneath the fury, quieter and colder, lay Zoe's words. Don't come looking. Too late, he thought, grabbing his tool belt. Somewhere in the dark, a joke formed. Why did the Admiral cross the galaxy? To fix a leak. He almost smiled. Chapter 2. The airlock hissed shut behind him, sealing Ravi inside the belly of the Iron Tide. The pirate ship stank of brine and burnt chitin, the walls glistening with a mucus-like film that shimmered under flickering lumen strips. He adjusted the ill-fitting maintenance suit, stolen from a scavenger dockworker, too tight across the shoulders, reeking of stale sweat, and tightened his grip on the hydrospanner. The tool felt absurdly small here, a toothpick against the jagged organic curves of the ship's architecture. Krazek's crew had built their vessel like a crustacean's carapace, armored segments fused with crude welding corridors, ribbed with bone-like struts, the air thick with the click-clack of clawed feet, echoing through ventilation shafts. Focus, he told himself, stepping into the gloom. Plumbing. You're here to fix pipes. But the Reaper stirred in his chest, calculating sight lines, mapping choke points, tallying enemy numbers. 20 years of tactical instinct screamed at him to find the armory first, to cripple the plasma banks, to turn Krazek's own ship against him. But Zoe's face hung in his mind, bloodied but unbroken in that biogel tank, and he forced himself to shuffle forward, head down, playing the part, a hunched laborer, a nobody. The first crew member scuttled past, a hulking hybrid of crustacean and machine, its exoskeleton bolted with rusted armor plating. Ravi kept his eyes on the floor, catching fractured glimpses of himself in the creature's mirrored claws. A gaunt man with grease smeared across his jaw, his once keen gaze dulled by station rot. The pirate didn't spare him a glance. Good. Invisibility was a weapon sharper than any blade. He followed the thrum of engines deeper into the ship, the walls pulsing faintly as if alive. The Iron Tide's reactor was an old Krillian model, he realized, a unstable fusion core jury-rigged to power systems it was never meant to sustain. Leaks, he thought, tracing a hand along a shuddering pipe. Everywhere. It was almost too easy. A guttural snarl echoed ahead. Ravi froze as two pirates rounded the corner, their mandibles clacking in a staccato rhythm. He pressed himself into a shadowed alcove, his pulse thudding in his ears. The larger one paused, its faceted eyes glinting as it sniffed the air. Skriva, it rasped, claw tapping the wall. Ravi's fingers tightened around the hydrospanner. 3 meters. Strike the ocular cluster first, then the ventral nerve. The pirate lurched sideways, convulsing. Its companion hissed, retreating as the creature's exoskeleton cracked audibly, greenish fluid oozing from its joints. Ravi blinked. The stench of ammonia flooded the corridor. A stress response, he realized. They were allergic to something. To him, his lips twitched. Dad jokes as biological warfare, Anya would have laughed. He waited until the pirates retreated, their clicks fading into the ship's hum, before slipping into the reactor chamber. The room was a cathedral of decay, a vaulted ceiling strung with corroded cables, the fusion core throbbing like a diseased heart at its center, and there, shackled to a console, was an insectoid engineer, its iridescent wings clipped, its compound eyes dim with exhaustion. The creature flinched as Ravi approached. No more repairs, it croaked in broken universal, antenna drooping. Ravi knelt, inspecting the manacles, cheap durasteel, sloppy. I'm not here to hurt you, he murmured, digging a pick from his belt. The engineer stared, its thorax vibrating. You smell human. Occupational hazard. The lock clicked open. Why free me? Ravi hesitated. The question echoed in the hollows of his past. Decisions made in war rooms. Lives, weighed against objectives. Because you're collateral. Because I need an ally. Because my daughter's life is worth 1,000 of yours. But the words that came were simpler, truer. Because it's right. The engineer, Rix, it stammered, rubbed its chafed wrists. Krazak will flay you. He'll try. Ravi turned to the reactor, squinting at the labyrinth of pipes. Help me depressurize the plasma conduits. Gently. Rix hesitated, then skittered to a terminal, its spindly fingers dancing across the keys. Use sabotage. They'll trace it. Let them. Ravi wedged his hydrospanner into a valve, the metal groaning as he twisted. Ever heard a human joke, Rix? Joke? Why did the crab hate engineers? Rix's antenna twitched. Why? They kept shelling out repairs. The reactor shuddered. For a heartbeat, Ravi feared he'd miscalculated. Then Rix emitted a high-pitched chittering. Laughter. The pipes creaked as pressure dropped, the cores hummed, dipping to a drowsy whine. Around them, the ship groaned, lumen strips flickering. You are terrible, Rix wheezed, though its eyes brightened. Occupational hazard, Ravi repeated, grinning. They worked in tandem, a silent dance of sabotage. Rix guided him through access tunnels, slick with algae, past barracks where pirates gnawed on irradiated meat, their laughter like grinding glass. Ravi's hydrospanner became a conductor's baton, each twist and strike orchestrated to discordance. He flooded the starboard thrusters with coolant, shorted the ventral shields, and in a moment of petty inspiration, rerouted the waste reclamation system to Krazak's private quarters. You're enjoying this, Anya's ghost accused. I'm efficient, he retorted silently, crawling through a ventilation shaft. But she was right. Beneath the fear for Zoe, beneath the guilt, a spark of the old Reaper thrived. The tactician who'd once outmaneuvered the Krillian armada, with nothing but a frigate and a hologram of himself singing show tunes. This was his language, chaos disguised as order, victory carved from the enemy's arrogance. Rix halted at a junction, antenna quivering. Zoe is held below, near the hangar. Ravi's breath caught. How do you know? Krazak brags. Loud. The ship lurched suddenly, throwing them against the shaft walls. Alarms wailed, a deep ululating cry that vibrated in Ravi's molars. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor ahead in bloody hues. Intruders, Rix whispered. Worse. Ravi peered through a grate. Below, pirates scrambled, their claws clattering as they surged toward the armory. They've found the sabotage. Go, Rix urged, nudging him toward a service ladder. Save her. I delay them. Ravi stared at the engineer. They'll kill you. Rix's mandibles clicked softly. Better than cages. There was no time to argue, no time to mourn. Ravi dropped into the lower deck, the hydrospanner cold in his hand. The hangar loomed ahead, its doors scarred by laser burns, the acrid tang of fuel sharpening the air. He moved like a shadow, like the Reaper he'd buried,
past guards too panicked to notice the human in their midst. Zoe's cell was a repurposed storage locker, its force field flickering weakly, empty. His heart stalled. A scrap of paper lay on the floor, crisp and white against the grime. "Dad, I had it handled. P.S. I kept the pirate ship." The words blurred. Ravi crumpled the note, laughter and rage warring in his throat. Of course she'd escaped. She was Anya's daughter, relentless, brilliant, allergic to damsels. The clang of claws snapped him back. Krazak filled the doorway, his carapace oozing green ichor, his claws crackling with stolen plasma. "Reaper," the pirate lord hissed. Ravi smiled. "Heard you've got a leak." The fight was brutality and farce. Krazak swung. Ravi ducked. Claws tore through bulkheads. Hydrospanners sparked against armor. They danced through the hangar, past gutted fighters and leaking fuel pods. Ravi's puns slicing deeper than any blade. "Why won't you die?" Krazak roared, slamming him into a console. Ravi wheezed, tasting blood. "Bad punchlines are hard to kill." He wrenched free, thumbing the hydrospanner's overload setting. The tool whined, glowing white hot. "Here's a joke." Ravi spat. A crab walks into a bar. He jammed the hydrospanner into a chink in Krazak's chestplate, and loses his ship. The explosion blew him backward. Fire bloomed, hungry and bright, as Krazak's howls merged with the sirens. Ravi staggered to his feet, the hangar dissolving into smoke and chaos. Somewhere above, engines roared, a ship breaking free. The iron tide shuddered, its spine cracking. Zoe's voice crackled over the intercom, crisp and triumphant. "Need a lift, old man." He almost wept.
Chapter 3. The note crumpled in Ravi's fist, its edges biting into his palm like a reproach. "I had it handled." The words lingered, sharp and serrated, as the iron tide shuddered around him, its groans deepening into death rattles. Smoke coiled through the hangar, thick with the stench of burning chitin and ionized fuel. Somewhere above, the ship's skeletal ribs screeched as pressure hemorrhaged from cracked bulkheads, the air thinning, turning brittle. Krazak's howls still echoed through the corridors, a dissonant counterpoint to the alarms, but Ravi stood motionless, the hydrospanner dangling from his grip like a forgotten limb. "She didn't need you." The truth was a cold star in his chest, its gravity pulling at old wounds. He saw Zoe at 12, her small hands gripping a stolen datapad, rewiring a crippled shuttle's nav system while he'd been light years away, negotiating a ceasefire that hadn't held. He saw her at 20, standing in the ashes of a border outpost, her face streaked with soot and defiance, refusing evacuation. "I can fix this," she'd said, and he'd let her because duty had carved him hollow, because the Reaper had forgotten how to be a father. A tremor rocked the deck. Ravi stumbled, his boots slipping in pools of viscous fluid leaking from overhead pipes. The iron tide was dying, its organic mechanical hybrid anatomy succumbing to the sabotage he and Vrix had sown. Bioluminescent moss patching the walls pulsed erratically, their glow fading to a sickly gray. He pressed onward, the corridors narrowing, their rib-like struts closing in as if the ship itself sought to crush him. Memories bled into the present, a game he'd played with Zoe during rare shore leaves. Find the weakness. She'd point to a starfighter, a diplomat, a dockmaster, and he'd dissect their flaws. Overconfidence, greed, fear of silence. Now the game turned inward. Your weakness, Reaper? You love a ghost. The father you think you should have been. The armory door loomed ahead, warped by heat, half melted. Inside, the remains of plasma rifles lay scattered like metallic carrion, their power cores gutted by his own hand hours earlier. Ravi's breath fogged in the freezing air, each exhale a testament to the dying life support. He scavenged a vibroblade from the debris, its hilt slick with algae, and tried not to think of Zoe piloting the iron tide, her ship now, according to the note, through the Nixian Belt's debris field. Tried, and failed. She'll tear the hull open on the first asteroid. She'll underestimate Krazak's tenacity. A metallic clang shattered the silence. Ravi spun, blade raised, as a figure emerged from the smoke. Krazak, the pirate lord's carapace, was a ruin of fissures, green ichor oozing from a dozen wounds, but his claws still crackled with stolen plasma. One eye was a molten crater, the other burning with primal fury. Reaper, he hissed, the word mangled by broken mandibles. Ravi tightened his grip on the vibroblade. You're looking, shell-shocked. The pun hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown. Krazak roared, lunging, his claws shearing through a support beam. Ravi ducked, rolling behind a shattered console, his mind bifurcating, half tactical calculus, half searing regret. Should have sealed the reactor vents sooner, should have taught Zoe to fly a Krillian frigate, should have. A claw grazed his ribs, tearing through the maintenance suit. Pain blossomed, hot and bright, but the Reaper leaned into it, let it sharpen him. He feinted left, then drove the vibroblade into a chink in Krazak's armor. The pirate howled, retaliating with a backhand that sent Ravi skidding across the deck. Get up, she's waiting. The voice wasn't his, Anya's maybe, or the ghost of Lieutenant Vera. He lurched upright, tasting blood. Krazak advanced, his movements jerky, unhinged. Why won't you die? The pirate rasped. Ravi grinned, red staining his teeth. Bad jokes have staying power. He thumbed the hydrospanner's overload switch, its casing glowing cherry red. Krazak hesitated, a fatal pause. Here's another, Ravi spat. Why don't crabs give to charity? He lunged, driving the hydrospanner into the pirate's oozing chest wound. Because they're shellfish. The explosion tore through the armory. Consciousness returned in fragments, cold metal beneath his cheek, the acrid tang of melted polymers. Zoe's voice, warped by comm static, boarding the bridge. Stay down, old man. Ravi blinked, his vision swimming. The iron-tide ceiling yawned above him, its biomechanical tendons snapping like overstrained cables. He dragged himself upright, using the vibroblade as a crutch. The corridor beyond the armory was a charnel house, pirates scuttling in panicked circles, their exoskeletons cracking under the strain of the dying ship. She's winning, without you. Pride and grief warred as he limped toward the bridge, each step a symphony of agony. The ship's architecture contorted around him, bulkheads weeping black fluid, lumen strips shorting out in showers of sparks. He passed a viewport, its glass spider-webbed, and glimpsed the Nixian belt beyond, a kaleidoscope of asteroids and derelict ships, their skeletal hulls glowing faintly in the light of a dying star. Zoe's voice crackled again over the intercom, commanding, precise, as she rerouted power to the thrusters. Starboard shields at 12%, adjusting for debris cluster. She sounded like him, like Anya, like the best parts of both. A pirate lunged from an alcove, claws raised. Ravi disarmed it with a vibroblade twist to the elbow joint, then jammed the hydrospanner into its thorax. Knock knock. The pirate convulsed, ichor foaming at its mandibles. Who's there? Ravi rasped, limping past. Not you. The bridge doors were sealed, scorched by laser fire. Ravi leaned against the control panel, his blood-slick fingers fumbling with the override codes Vrix had whispered in the ducts. The doors hissed open, revealing chaos. Zoe stood at the command console, her back to him, fingers flying across holographic controls. The Iron Tides bridge was a grotesque fusion of organic and mechanical, pulsing nerve clusters, intertwined with flickering screens, the floor carpeted in bioluminescent moss, now blackened and dying. Through the cracked viewport, Ravi saw the asteroid field parting like a curtain, Zoe piloting the ship with a smuggler's grace. Krazak's remaining crew lay strewn across the deck, their exoskeletons split by precise plasma burns. Her work, he realized, always efficient. She didn't turn. Took you long enough. Ravi sagged against a console, the vibroblade slipping from his grasp. You kept the ship. Had to. You'd have given it to the Union. A proximity alert blared. Zoe swore, banking the Iron Tide hard to port.
An asteroid grazed the hull, the impact shuddering through the deck. "Shields are gone," she muttered, more to herself than him. Ravi's gaze fell on the neural interface helm, a grotesque crown of tendrils and electrodes. "Krazak's throne. The core's unstable. We need to jettison it." "I know. The Cascade will." "I know." Their eyes met. Her face was bloodied, her flight suit torn, but her gaze was steel, the same steel he'd seen in the mirror for decades. "You taught her that," the Reaper whispered, "or failed to unteach it." Ravi moved to the engineering station, his fingers trembling as he initiated the core ejection. Warnings flashed, the ship screaming, as its heart was torn out. Zoe didn't flinch, her hands steady on the controls. 10 seconds, he croaked, planning a punchline. "Would you laugh?" "Never." The core detonated, a silent bloom of light in the viewport. The shock wave hit, hurling the iron tide toward the belt's edge. Zoe fought the controls, her muscles straining, until the ship stabilized in the dead star's orbit. Silence settled, thick and heavy. Ravi studied her, the curve of her jaw, the scar on her temple, the way she chewed her lip when calculating a jump. "Anya's tells. Your ghosts. You were right," he said finally. "About what?" "I should have burned the holo, the one with the metal." Zoe's hand stilled. "Why?" "The man in it, he didn't know the first thing about being loved." She turned, her mask slipping for a heartbeat. In her eyes, he saw the 6-year-old who'd built a fort from his dress uniforms, the teenager who'd hacked his flagship to play pranks on the crew, the woman who'd outmaneuvered a pirate lord. "You're still a prick," she said softly. "But I'm your prick." A snort, almost a laugh. She tossed him a medkit. "Patch yourself up. You're bleeding on the deck." He obeyed, the antiseptic sting pulling him back to 100 battlefield infirmaries. Zoe initiated the jump sequence, the stars stretching into streaks outside. "Where now?" he asked. "Wherever the next mess is." She glanced at him, amber eyes glinting. "You'll hate it." He leaned back, exhaustion and relief intertwining. "Can't wait." Chapter 4. The iron tide hung adrift in the corpse light of a neutron star, its hull glistening with frost where escaping oxygen had crystallized against the void. Ravi leaned against the viewport, his breath fogging the glass, and watched the debris field they'd fled shimmer like a funeral veil. Behind him, Zoe moved through the pirate ship's gutted bridge, her boots clicking against floors streaked with the ichor of Krazak's crew. She had claimed the vessel, but it wore her like an ill-fitting suit, its organic mechanical systems resisting her commands, its corridors still echoing with the clicks and hisses of the dead. "She'll tame it," he thought, "or die trying." The ache in his ribs had dulled to a throb, the medkit's synth-skin patching the worst of Krazak's claw marks. He'd refused a painkiller. The hurt was an anchor, a reminder that he'd survived long enough to fail her again. The note in his pocket felt heavier than a singularity. "I had it handled." She'd carved her independence into the galaxy's hide, and he'd been a spectator, a ghost haunting his own redemption. Zoe's reflection appeared beside his in the viewport. She'd swapped her torn flight suit for a scavenged pirate coat, its fur collar matted with alien grime. The look suited her, a queen of ruins. "Krazak's alive," she said, tossing a datapad onto the console. A hologram flickered to life, security footage of the pirate lord's escape pod jettisoning into the neutron star's pull, its thrusters flaring like a wounded animal's final snarl. Ravi's jaw tightened. He'll regroup, find another ship. He'll come for this ship. She tapped the hull with her boot. "It's his pride, his legacy, and you're baiting him." "I'm ending him." Her voice was calm, surgical. "You in?" He turned. Her face was all angles in the starlight, the scar on her temple a pale thread. "Anya's defiance, my recklessness." The Reaper stirred, whispering tactics, but the father hesitated. "You don't need me," he said. "No." She held his gaze. "But I'd like you there." The admission hung between them, fragile as a soap bubble. He nodded, the motion cracking the scab on his neck. Blood trickled, warm and insistent. They prepped the ship in silence. Z worked the engines, her fingers dancing across the iron tide's pulsating control nodes, as if conducting a symphony. Ravi limped through the armory, jury-rigging plasma coils into proximity mines. The ship resisted them both, sealing bulkheads without warning, venting oxygen from occupied rooms, its bioluminescent moss dimming to spite their efforts. It was a living thing, grieving its butchered crew. "You're a bad guest," Ravi mused, welding a mine to a support beam. "But so am I." In the reactor chamber, he found Vrix's corpse. The engineer lay curled beneath a console, its iridescent wings folded like shattered glass. Ravi knelt, ignoring the sting in his ribs, and pried a small device from the creature's clawed hand, a homemade beacon, its screen cracked but still blinking. Coordinates, a final gift. "You deserved better," he thought, tucking the beacon into his pocket. "We all do." Zoe's voice crackled over the intercom. "He's here." Mission. Krazak's new ship was a scarab-shaped monstrosity, its hull studded with the cannibalized remains of fighters and freighters. It descended on the iron tide like a carrion bird, docking clamps screeching as it latched onto the pirate ship's spine. Ravi stood in the shadow of the bridge doors, a hydrospanner in one hand, and Vrix's beacon in the other. Zoe had insisted on the welcoming committee. "He'll expect a trap," she'd said, "so we'll give him a party." The doors hissed open. Krazak stormed through, his carapace patched with crude metal plates, his remaining eye a festering wound. A dozen pirates flanked him, their claws still dripping from recent kills. Ravi stepped into the light. "Miss us?" Krazak froze, his mandibles quivered, a wet clicking sound rising from his thorax. Ravi recognized it. Laughter. "Reaper," the pirate rasped. "You cockroach." "Cockroaches survive." Ravi thumbed the beacon. "You'd know, bug." Krazak lunged. The world dissolved into chaos. Mission. Zoe watched from the vents above, her breath still, her finger hovering over the detonator. Ravi moved like a man half his age, dodging claws, baiting Krazak toward the reactor core, his quips a weapon as sharp as the hydrospanner. Why did the crab fail comedy school? He ducked a plasma blast. No. Claw T timing. Krazak convulsed, his exoskeleton cracking. The pirates faltered, their allergic spasms buckling their knees. Zoe smiled. Classic dad. She dropped into the fray, her stolen coat billowing. The pirates turned, but she was already among them, a blur of vibroblade strikes and hijacked plasma fire. Ravi's lessons echoed in her bones. Exploit hesitation. Turn their strength against them. A claw grazed her thigh. She hissed, driving her blade into the pirate's optic nerve. "Thanks for the upgrade," she spat, stealing its sidearm. Ravi was at the reactor now, his back against the core. Krazak loomed over him, dripping venom and rage. "You nothing," the pirate hissed. "No fleet. No daughter." Ravi's gaze found Zoe's across the chamber. He nodded. She hit the detonator. Mission. The mines erupted in sequence, a chain of fire ripping through the iron tide stolen guest. Krazak's ship tore free, its hull peeling like rotten fruit. Pirates scrambled, their screams lost to the vacuum as the air rushed out. Ravi lunged, tackling Krazak into the reactor's embrace. The pirate thrashed, his claws scoring deep furrows in Ravi's chest, but the Reaper held fast. "This ends now," Ravi growled. Zoe's voice boomed over the intercom. "Dad, let go." He didn't. The reactor's pulse quickened, its light bleeding from blue to white. Krazak's eye widened. Fear. At last. "Why?" the pirate rasped. Ravi grinned. "Dad joke. Punchline." He triggered Vrix's beacon. The explosion was soundless, a flash of light, then darkness. Ravi woke in the Kestrel's medbay, his body wrapped in synth-skin and regret. Zoe sat beside him, her face drawn, her hands stained with engine grease. "You kept the beacon," she said. "You kept the ship." She handed him a dented hydrospanner, the one he'd lost in the reactor. Its handle was engraved now. "World's okayest plumber. Don't do that again," she muttered. "Retire? Die." He studied her, the soot smudged on her cheek, the bloodied knuckles, the way she chewed her lip when she lied. She stayed. She waited. "Deal," he said. They parted at Haven 7. Zoe stood at the Iron Tide's ramp, the ship purring obediently at her back. Ravi's station loomed behind him, its rusted docks and flickering lumen strips suddenly alien. "You could come," she said, "and listen to you boss me around." "Pass," she smirked, tossing him a comlink. "For emergencies, what's your rate?" "Dad jokes, paid in advance." He mustered his worst. "Why don't skeletons fight pirates?" she groaned. "Why? They don't have the guts." Her laughter followed him home. Epilogue. The neutron star's light faded, its corpse-cool glow yielding to the warmth of a hologram flickering above Ravi's workbench. Zoe's face grinned down at him, her new crew a mosaic of species at her back. The Iron Tide soared behind them, reborn and relentless. "Still a prick." Her message played. "But mine." Ravi sipped his bourbon, the bite smoother now, and whispered to the empty room, "Why did the Admiral retire?" The stars as ever kept their secrets.